One. Hello and welcome everyone. This is Taco Movie Talks, episode 10, and I am brought to you here with a new guest, and that is Matthew, who I was actually lucky enough to find via Letterbox, which is a pretty sick movie kind of social media site, and he is War Champ on Letterbox, and I will be dropping his profile URL down in the description. So definitely check him out because Matthew, I think you can agree with this. You have very uh, wide tastes. You've definitely seen a lot, and you have a very good taste at that as well.
Well, thank you for that. I would say I have a wide taste. It's hard to find a lot of people that want to watch movies with me.
Yeah,
Um,
I think like how wide your tastes are, it probably would be difficult.
yeah, people like a lot of the times I want to watch, a foreign film and black and white. And a few years ago, I wouldn't even consider a movie that was like earlier than the year 2000 with the release date. But then, when you start diving in and you see like movies from the 70s are, in my opinion, even better than the movies now. You just start to branch out more. And then, I just find like, oh, this director liked these directors, so I'm going to go watch their movies. And it just kind of branches off like that. But I think it's a great way to, open up your which directors you watch, what kind of films you watch, realize that every country has their own kind of, um,
Like
you
famous,
know,
great
yeah,
director.
and their own kind of styles too. Like even
Mm,
watching movies from like the Middle East, where you would think people would think they make movies there and stuff. Yeah, they do, and they're
mhm.
actually really good stuff like that. So, but yeah,
Yeah, I was totally in the same boat as you. I was like, very closed off as far as what I'd watch, but kind of I feel like I'm still at the discovery point, and I'm glad that I did branch out because the movies that I kind of thought were, and it's a bad word certainly in the world of cinematography, but I thought were perhaps pretentious before, I can now find appreciation in, and like you said, I think they're better now than, a lot of the stuff that does come out now.
yeah. And I think one thing Richard Linklater, who I'm sure you're familiar with, said. I think he said if he was to start a class teaching film, he would start with Bergman, Bresson, I don't know exactly how to say his name, and Tarkovsky. And I mean, those are all like directors that people think are, pretentious, and Godard and those people. I think a lot of it is because they present their movies, and Bergman does this too, and both the movies we'll be talking about, in like a more interpretive art form where there's is a plot and a narrative in most of them,
Mhm,
but at the same time it's not like telling you what's happening. Like Christopher Nolan movies. I like Christopher Nolan movies, but his are very plot focused, whereas this it's more the plot's unfolding before your eyes and you're like questioning things,
mhm.
as the story progresses. And I think the way different people interpret different things is, you get that in music, you get that in actual artwork and paintings. And I think that my favorite movies take me on some sort of emotional ride, like looking at a painting that was like very inspirational or something. That same kind of feeling. So I found that those types of movies were more my gist.
Absolutely, yeah.
So
I'm glad you brought it to Bergman because silly me, completely forgot to mention the theme of this video. It's Ingmar Bergman, part two. There was a video in which we covered a couple of his movies, and now we're going to cover a couple more. And going back to what you said too, and I wonder your thoughts on this, and maybe I'm not giving like fans in general enough credit, but do you think that there's not solid interpretations and that you're very much kind of forced to think about the plots and the themes, that is something that maybe scares audience members off?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Like he's not telling you. Yeah, it scares people off. Well, one because it scares a lot of American watchers off because it's not in English. That's the number one thing I found. But besides that fact that it's not in English, they're trying to follow the dialogue. They're watching the film, and for in Cries and Whispers, people will just want to be like, "Why is there so much red? Why is there red everywhere? What does it mean?" But it he could have just liked that color,
Mhm,
and he could have been like, "Wow, this is gonna look really great for this film." Or he could have meant, red is often like a symbol for death, and the movie's about death, pretty
mhm,
much. It's about grief, so you can interpret it that way. But I think what you said, I think that his films are more just about more abstract concepts instead of like, character A develops and grows, or character A beats character B or be the villain and saves the day. This is more of like, here are these characters that I've seen these people in my life,
mhm,
but they're put on screen as these characters. But to me, the best part about it is that I can see I'll like see the mom and the daughter and or Eva and Charlotte, whatever her name is, in Autumn Sonata, for example. And I know people like that. Like I've seen that in person, and to me, that's very. It makes the movie personal, and it makes me enjoy it more, just because it makes me think. I guess
yeah, and, you just touched on the 2 movies that we're gonna be covering today, which
Yeah.
are Cries and Whispers and Autumn Sonata, and I think you brought up a really good point in that I think something that these 2 movies share is that the endings are really, I don't think they are as definitive as like what you had brought up is, hero A defeats villain B. It kind of just
Right.
leaves you like, hey, the major conflict happened, and life often doesn't just stop after a great conquest or what have you.
Yeah, yeah, like, I think a lot of people when they see movies, and this is when I grew up watching movies, what I was used to because I watch action, they want a resolution,
Hmm.
They want there to be an ending, like the world is saved, or someone that is supposed to accomplish something does that, or you see some kind of great character change. When in here, it's pretty much the endings are left vague, and that's because I think that's how life is, there's no beginning and end, even if you are to go through some struggle and conquer something in life, there's just the next project, you're moving on to the next thing you're doing. It's not like life ever has beginning, middle, and end. It's just all flows together, and I think that his his films, in general, um, it's so hard, I think, to m do the make a movies about the concepts he does and the way he does, with all the dialogue and all the, character emotion you see on the actors and actresses' faces, uh, that to me is really what life is about. It's not just about that's the story, The story
Hmm.
isn't just, I wake up and I mean, nothing against like an action movie, but like I need to go defeat the gangsters or something,
Hmm. Yeah, I think a lot of movies today are more about escapism, where this is giving you a probably fresh perspective or interpretation of something you can probably relate to. And it's 2
Yeah,
different, very different bags, you know?
yeah, yeah. Especially the different characters in these two films. they're all it's very family oriented, both of them
Mhm.
are, and you see that family tension. And that's in pretty much most families. There's some kind of drama going on in the lives of most families in some way. Usually not is oftentimes not as bad as in these movies, oftentimes way worse, if there's abuse going on. But it's kind of like you're peering into different situations. I think Cries and Whispers is more about the relationships that often are, I, I would say, like the family struggle. I mean, we're going to get into the movie, and I'd say Autumn Sonata is more about kind of the cycle of abuse in a
Mhm.
way of a narcissistic parent. But we can get more into that when we specifically talk about the movie. Uh,
Absolutely. Uh, Not to put you on the spot here, and you don't have
yeah,
to be absolutely specific, but you clearly seem to, like Bergman, and I know
yeah.
that you have a lot of experience watching different directors. Like, where does he fall within, your rankings, or would you say he's like he has to be top 5? If you
Oh,
don't.
gee. um, Man, I love so many directors now. It used to be so obvious for me, but like I've seen so many Bergman films, and I have like this little list of my favorite directors, and he's not on it on my page, but like the amount of just like basically he doesn't miss. Like in all the films I've seen, like I haven't seen one that's bad. Like he doesn't like Malik for me, for example, makes more like 5 out of 5s, what I consider like perfect
Mhm.
films. But Bergman has just more like great films, and they're all consistent, and he has a lot of them.
Mhm.
So for me, I would say Bergman is easily, I would say, a top, like, objectively. This is
Mhm.
not personal. Objectively, he's a top 5 director of all time. Not only because I think so many people have been inspired by him. If you just like, I haven't seen any YouTube videos, but I'm sure there are, where it's like comparing Bergman to a later film. Best example for me, when I watched Mulholland Drive, and I like David Lynch too. I love
Mhm.
David Lynch. I was like, this is Persona. You know what I mean? Like, I was like, this is kind of like Persona, basically is. So there's a lot. He made a lot of he just created a lot of inspiration. So and I think that just the amount of sheer amount of movies he made that were all important. Wild Strawberries, Seventh Seal, Persona, these two, Fanning's and Alexander, Scenes from a Marriage. There's just so many that are considered among the greatest movies that he just has to be one of the best directors of all time, in my opinion.
Yeah. And my exposure to him is not super duper extensive. I think I have seen maybe 5 now. It's either 4 or
Yeah,
5, but I mean, so far it's like you said, he really doesn't miss as far as I'm concerned. Um,
yeah,
no
yeah. He does.
glaring weaknesses at all.
And I think my favorite part about his films is I can tell they're personal.
Mhm.
Um, I'm not sure if this is true of him or a different director. I'm not sure if he grew up. He was the one that grew up in a very religious household, and a lot of his movies touch on religion a lot. Cries and Whispers does. Winter Light does. He has. You could tell they're personal because I feel like he writes the characters that were potentially like maybe his mother. Or I've actually read some of his. I don't know if it was an autobiography, but this little book he had that he wrote about when he was making all his different films and how he felt about making them. And oftentimes himself was lost when making the movie. He didn't really know where he was going.
Mhm.
But I think in his films, it like I said earlier, like the way he does it is, at first you don't really know. Everything's kind of a question. You feel the tension is there, and then as the movie unravels, you realize more and more why that tension is there. and it doesn't. There's not necessarily an explosion like a big fight or anything, but all the characters usually pretty much end up towards the end. You see their true colors essentially.
Yeah, I could not have said it better myself. With that being said, let's dive deep into Cries and Whispers, which obviously Ingmar Bergman. This is 1973, and this was the first Ingmar in color that I watched. Um, and
Okay.
I guess to really boil the plot down, we have three sisters, one of which is dying, and
Mhm.
the other two are watching over her, as well as the housemaid. And we really get it has kind of the structure, which is pretty neat, where we'll see kind of like a straight shot on the face of a character and kind of get these really in-depth personal moments that either happened before she started dying and while she was dying. And it kind of tells us a lot about each character and how they interact with one another. And there's, a lot of themes that kind of go across this, having to do with obviously the family involved being very rich, the housemaid not being so rich, and kind of what every character valued as opposed to each other. And overall, like you said, it's very uniquely told. And the ending isn't that big splash that you might see in more action oriented films, or more American based films, but you really get a full story told the whole way throughout. What were your initial thoughts from this movie?
Yeah, I agree with what you say completely, especially about the characters' faces. Like, for example, at the beginning, okay, so you got the sister who's dying, and then Anna is this very important character in my opinion, the housemaid.
Mm-hmm.
She is kind of like the one that really cares about the sister. And
Mm-hmm.
I got the sense that, this is it the way he filmed it, it looks like they're in this manor, kind of manor that you would see in like the British countryside, but obviously they're in Denmark because I believe he's Danish if I'm right, not Swedish. But anyway, so you can tell they're bourgeois, they're all upper class. But it seems like the sister's kind of left out, and they make that apparent through her journal, um, and some of the flashbacks, and then it goes to the other sisters and you see what they really care about. So first you see Maria, I think the redhead's name, and she's just trying to get with that doctor, her old fling.
Mm-hmm.
And then you see the other girl or the other sister, and the way they film her scenes just comes off as evilish to me. Like, they have her sitting in this black big chair that looks like that just always reminded me, even the first time I saw, of this, like an evil throne. Like if you've seen Game of Thrones, like she's Cersei. She reminded me of Cersei. You know what I mean? Like big time.
Yeah.
Like she doesn't really, her composure, at least at the beginning, is all very flat, so you don't know what she's thinking or feeling, but that eventually kind of comes out as the story progresses. You kind of see this is the sister that kind of thinks she's above the others, and then you see that they're there, and the two sisters are kind of caring for I forget the sister that's dying's name. um they are caring for her. Oh, Agnes, is it
Yes,
Agnes?
I think you were. I'm
Yeah.
looking. Yep, Agnes.
And they're caring for her, but every time, at least towards the beginning, she needs help and she can actually vocalize, she calls for Anna, and you can see that it
Yes.
bothers the sisters a little. But and then they go try and help, but she doesn't want anyone with but Anna. and I really think it's because, through the flashbacks and what they kind of showed, she was that one sister that didn't really fit in that bourgeois kind of way when she was younger. She was kind of the outcast. And her sisters were more of the pompous, um, you know, kind of spoiled. They seem to do what they want. At the end of the film, they just kind of leave the house and they're like, "Oh, Anna, you can stay here for a month." So you get at the beginning the tension, and then it envelops, or it develops, as she's dying, as Agnes is dying. Um, but yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I think definitely as far as like status goes, it's like the higher status someone is, kind of the less emotional attachments they are able to have with people. Um,
yeah,
if you want to,
yeah,
like, the maid is clearly so caring. It's
yeah.
almost like a mother type character to Anna.
Yeah, exactly. Like she is kind of the mother, and you see that, or at least I saw, with maybe more so with actually I think her name is Charlotte, the sister that's not the redhead.
Oh, is
You
it
see,
Charlotta?
or Charlotta or something. Yeah, you see her. I think she's the one that actually has the most emotion, but it's just all boiled up. Like there's that scene where she's talking to, I don't know if it's her husband, that man at the dinner table.
Mm-hmm.
And and just the way she talks about her sister, the way she talks about the estate, her family, you can tell there's a lot of pent up, I don't know if it's aggression. I think it's all stems from some sort of self-hatred though. Um I
Yes.
don't know if they think that Agnes was kind of like the pure sister, or he makes it so, it's like I said earlier, it's interpretive. You don't really know for sure. Maria seems a little more caring, but then the sisters don't seem to like each other either. The ones that aren't dying towards the end, you kind
Yeah.
of realize that too. They kind of hate each other. So it could be this, they're all kind of emotionally detached. They're all always dressed up extremely nice, in very nice outfits. They seem to care a lot more about their appearance than they even do about their dying sister, which I think is something he was trying to show. Because they'd be sitting in that room, she'd start having her, attacks of pain, and they would just kind of look at her in a disgusted, confused way. Like they're not, like they feel like they're not supposed to be around death, or they're
Mm-hmm.
not, or they feel disgusted by it. Instead of going to care for her like Anna does. Um,
Absolutely. And another thing that I just want to mention real quick, this
yeah.
is just so brilliantly acted. I thought all
Oh yeah.
four of the actresses were amazing. Um, the dying scenes were really, really visceral, very effective, and all the character work was really, really good. Um, and then touching on the kind of the self hatred that you mentioned, um, there's a pretty, I I guess, shocking. It was very subtly done, but where I think she's the eldest, or at least the richest sister. Um, I think is it Ingrid Tholen? Is that the one who kind of plays the oldest sister?
The one that Charletta, the one that I said was kind of evil.
Yes.
I think so. Yeah, I believe so.
She she like self mutilates herself, and
Yeah.
then she like wipes the blood on her face. Kind of there's just that a slight little parallel to The Exorcist, but it's almost like she hates herself so much she needs to hurt herself, and on top of that, she doesn't even want the love or affection from her husband. which she seems to hate as well.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
we have the redheaded sister, and, I don't know, maybe she's chasing the doctor because she knows that she can't have that, or that maybe she wants to be more pure and actually follow someone she truly has feelings for. But, I can definitely see where you're coming from as far as self-hatred goes.
Yeah. Yeah. And another thing I thought that made that the self-hatred part is a part of it, but I love, especially at the beginning, they do close-ups of, like, doll houses and the antiques and the clocks, and oftentimes, the only thing you hear in the film is the clock, and to me, this is just another interpretive thing, but to me, that meant, her time's ticking away.
Mhm.
She's dying, and when you'd hear the clocks a lot of the times, from what I remember, and I took a note about it, it was often the times where, like you said earlier, it would be a really great shot of an actress's face, and they're so good in this movie that they don't even have to say anything. Like their faces just speak like volumes. They like the faces that they're making basically evoke better dialogue than in any dialogue they could be saying. If you know what I'm getting at,
Exactly.
like sitting in the room with the clock ticking, her time's ticking away, and they're just sitting in there waiting, kind of for her to need more help, and then all of a sudden out of nowhere she starts crying, and you're just like, oh, and this is the second time watching it for me, and I forgot how like abrupt all of her her fits are, and it's just out of nowhere she starts crying, and then no one knows what to do, and it's like this panic situation, and it's just very like it's kind of showing, I guess, how they all are grieving, but they're not really grieving except Anna. Anna is the one to me that in her face I see pain for Agnes. The other girls I kind of see a disgust mixed with, and that could be for themselves or just being around sickness, like I said earlier, as well as this confusion they have because it seems like they were brought up. I was raised in a very, a suburb where bad things are not supposed to ever happen. I feel like they have never left that kind of bubble, if you know what I mean. So,
Mhm.
like, seeing someone die for them is like is insane. Like it turns them off.
Yeah, like
Even
they shouldn't be exposed to it themselves.
right, right, right.
And
Um,
I really liked whenever we kind of got to see Anna's interpretation through a dream sequence, where this is after Agnes had passed away, and all three of the remaining women who are alive, the two sisters and Anna, are kind of called into the room, and the sisters have absolutely, the eldest wants absolutely nothing to do with it, and she even is like, don't, I don't want to touch you, I don't even want to be near you, and just is like, why would you call me into the room to be with you while you're dead?
yeah, yeah. There's
Then we
a yeah,
we get the other sister, and she tries to be there for her as though she has a semblance of humanity left, but can't, and leaves Agnes there helpless, and then Anna has to kind of pick up all the pieces and be there.
right, right, yeah. Um, a weird dynamic I saw before she passed was the one time Anna wasn't there, there's a scene where, I forget which sister, if it's both, but they're combing her hair and basically treating her like a child. And to me, when I saw that, I was like, they never respected her. They're treating her like a baby and like combing her hair and like um reading to her and stuff. And I mean
Mhm.
that can be soothing, for someone who's dying, but it just seems like they don't know what to do and this is their sister. And so you don't know if either one of them feels bad for maybe never really being a part of her life, or if it's just they don't know what to do, so they're just gonna treat her like she's a helpless animal, you know?
Exactly.
With so yeah. Uh, it's it's so hard to, put into words exactly, what Bergman's trying to say, through all these scenes.
Yeah, I think, it's just, trying to uh, I don't necessarily think you could take it make you could make a takeaway if you, relate very closely to these relationships, you know?
Yeah, yeah,
But I necessarily and I mean, unless you fall on, one of the more bad ends of the spectrum and you're like, "Well, I wanna make a resolution to not be like that." But kinda showing the inequity in just how, life isn't always fair and that what you value isn't necessarily going to be valued by your neighbors.
yeah, yeah. Um, I think the sisters obviously valued very different things compared to Agnes, growing up, and, I don't know if this is shown in a flashback, but it just seems like they were kind of estranged from Agnes, and they were and someone's kinda like, "Hey, Agnes is dying, y'all need to come on back to the manor,"
Mhm.
and they're like, "Oh, great, we have to come back to the manor." You know what I mean? That's
Yeah.
the kind of people they strike me as. Um, and obviously, I mean, just seeing the other Bergman films I've seen, I think Bergman had a lot of, and this will come up in Autumn Sonata a lot more. I
Mhm.
think he had an experience or several experiences with some very narcissistic people, because I think in essence the sisters, it makes you question if they are narcissistic or if they really do care. But from what the movie shows me, I really think in the end they care about themselves, especially after the final scene, um,
Yes.
or the ending. But yeah, yeah.
And, yeah, like what you were saying, the final scene, and there's 2 kind of pivotal moments, and it shows, like, the true morality, the true character of Anna and Agnes. The first one being, and I think it is the absolute last scene, shows a memory from Agnes that, I guess is revealed through the diary that Anna takes as like the one possession. You're allowed one thing from this house after what was it, like 14 years of service.
Mhm.
Doesn't choose jewelry. I mean, there's probably plenty of things you could take from the house that would have a lot of worth, but she went sentimental and took the diary because it seemed like she truly cared, which says a lot about
Yes.
her.
Yeah, that was like her. She was a character that actually kind of got wrapped up, and you kind of understood her.
Mhm.
She, or Anna, continually cared about Agnes throughout the film, and then additionally at the end, when they're offering her all these material possessions, she's like, "No." Um, she just wants to stay there, and that's like it's because I think she liked Agnes, she liked the house, and they didn't like the house. But then they're having that discussion, like, I remember them saying, "Oh, you kick her out, she can fend for herself," and stuff like that, and I think that's just showing their perspective, the wives and the husbands, versus someone like Anna. They're like, they're the type of people that think, "Oh, she worked so hard in this house. If we let her go, she'll be fine. She'll find another job. She's a hard worker." And then themselves, they might be hard workers, but it seems to me like they're the type of people that kind of always gotten what they want throughout their life, and
Mhm.
especially through the flashbacks showing that they were always kind of rich. So they think they just like brush her off like you would brush off like a bug.
Mhm.
It's showing that huge social distinction between the way people like the sisters and their husbands think, like these rich business men or very very wealthy people, obviously old money, I would say, type people that have had money in their family for generations, versus you know pretty much most people on Earth who are more like Anna, who develop human connections more easily, um, who maybe when they're older realize that material possessions aren't everything, and I don't think the other characters in the movie quite ever understood that.
Yeah, and I think that was perfectly illustrated in that despite dying, like knowing her death was imminent, she was just happy to have the company of her sisters, kind of despite their flaws.
Right, right, yeah. Um, what do you think about the red? I mean, it's great cinematography. I love the shots outside. Very few. They're not very many, but those are all beautiful. But then the red and everything,
Hmm.
I love. Like I'm a big cinematography. I'm a sucker for it. So when it's really good, it really gets me into it. I don't know if he was, like I said before, I don't know if he was going for a symbolism thing or if this was just kind of like he was getting into color. But it's just crazy how like the cuts and the fades are red. The
Hmm.
every almost every furniture piece is red. Um, and it's just something I've never seen in a film before. I mean, I've never really seen a Wes Anderson film, but I know he does similar weird things with patterns. So I'm thinking that was probably inspired by Bergman doing stuff like this. Um,
Yeah, I like personally, I completely agree with you. It makes everything look very vibrant. It makes everything pop. Um,
yeah,
I definitely I do think there is some symbolism to it, and one of the big reasons is because, and you kind of mentioned it earlier, there was, I think it was a dinner between just the two remaining sisters where the whole room was black post mortem.
yeah,
So I
yeah,
feel like it was almost, as a means to um kind of show, like, to me it's like red is a really raw color as far as emotions go.
yeah, and it's also a color that like you don't see in films that much. It's like he painted the movie red.
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Uh, it's like he took a normal house and somehow made all the furniture, walls, floors red, and he just like painted over it in post. She didn't do it in post production, obviously, but that's what it seemed. It's like how could you make a house look like this without the editing? But I don't think he edited any of it.
mhm.
It's a pretty crazy aspect. Um, he a lot went into this set. It was a very very cool set design. Um,
Absolutely.
my favorite, I think, shot are when you see it's a still shot of them all just kind of waiting in that room next to the bed for her to need help again, and they just kinda like, you'll see one sister just sitting there kinda thinking, like, Anna walking around doing stuff, and it just kinda I don't know, I just really like that shot. Um, and
You
I wanted to talk about one conversation that I thought was extremely interesting towards the end, where the 2 sisters or, Charlotta basically tells Maria that she hates her,
mm,
and they basically are like start kinda having this weird power battle, I feel like. And this is like it's like they're starting drama amongst each other while their sister's dying in the other room. I mean, what says more about these characters than that? You know what I mean?
exactly. Very self-involved, and
Yeah,
um I correct it cuz I was that post death, cuz I thought that was when they were in like that black kitchen, and my memory might
it
not be
is.
serving
No,
me.
no, you're
Okay.
right, and I don't actually remember if it was after or before she passes. I think it's oh yeah, it's before she passes because I made some notes, and then
Okay.
later on, there's another God, it's a horrid scene actually, where Agnes grabs Maria like right before it's like right before she's dying, and there's like that scuffle where she kind of pulls Maria to the ground, and Maria freaks out. Do you remember that? It's like
Is
she can't handle being touched by
is
her by
that
Agnes.
Was that Anna's dream?
I don't know if that was a dream or not, actually. It might have been. It might have been a dream. I don't recall. But that scene, I just remember seeing that scene and remembering it, and it's horrifying because it's like whether it's the dream or not, it's like she's latching on. She's like
Wants
latching
so
on to Maria.
badly that
Help me,
connection.
basically. Yeah, and Maria's like, get off me, pretty much. You
Mhm.
know. I believe that scene is right before the funeral, uh, or close to before the funeral. Um,
It was just a thought that kind of struck me just now. And if this sounds just stupid, tell me straight up. But you might find some truth in this, and it kind of ties back to the color design.
yeah,
And this is based on the conversation that you kind of had. It feels like the red is kind of like the slow bleeding death of what the family connection could be. And it's you can either recover from the wound or it completely is dead and deceased if you can't kind of make amends and find ways to form the true connection that never existed.
yeah. Well, that along with the clocks, I would say, yeah. I would say that that is an interpretation Bergman would probably like. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's
Mhm.
definitely many interpretations, but what you just said, like the reasoning for the color, and then I also think the reasoning for hearing the clocks ticking all the time is that slow. Um, you're literally watching just her die in the movie,
Mhm.
you know, and it's that slow burn. I don't think that's a bad take whatsoever. I think it's an interpretive take, but I think that's what Bergman wants
Mhm.
people to do with his movies. He doesn't want us to say the red was there, had to be there because of because this was obviously a slow bleeding death, and they needed to either try and repair their family relations at this point or not before she died. I don't think because I hate movies that push messages, and I don't
Mhm.
think he's pushing that message, but I think that's something he would totally be like, yeah, that I think that's part of what I was going for,
Mhm.
or that's an idea I had whenever I made it all red and focused on clocks and things like that because it's kind of like as things progress, the relationships even between the alive sisters die, along with Agnes herself dying.
Yeah.
Uh,
And
yeah.
I just have two more little points. One is so the eldest sister says I hate you, and then they kind
Mhm.
of seem to make amends, and it was a
Yeah,
neat little editing thing where everything kind of said while they were making amends was silenced, as though
yeah.
we're
Like
just
we,
saving face, but there's actually no substance to this.
yeah. Like I completely agree with you. Like they say they hate each other, and then it's kind of like they're okay again. Um, and but it's really that and I've seen families act like this in real life. It's really that like they 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 really don't like each other, but they're
Hmm.
just not gonna get into it, you
Yeah.
know? Like, like they might never see each other again after they leave the manor and just not care.
Hmm.
Um, so it's one of those fake amends that I think a lot and I don't I don't want to say I don't have nothing against people that are super wealthy, and I don't think this is necessarily a symptom of being incredibly wealthy at all. You can be a rich and completely normal person,
Hmm.
but I think from the what we see from these characters, it's almost like they don't even have the capabilities to truly love each other like Anna loved Agnes. So even if they make up, it's not genuine. They're inauthentic people. You
Very
know what I mean?
hollow.
Yeah. Like all their I mean, what they wear is beautiful. I mean, they're obviously like their dresses and stuff.
Hmm.
Like they're always dressed to the T. They remind me of just very upper class 1800 early 1900 type people.
Like pseudo
Um
royalty almost.
Yeah, like a pseudo like maybe their, ancestors were royalty and they inherited that house. And so it seems like they grew up with that entitlement sense. But from what we see, at least, especially at the end with Anna going to the diary and then with the flashback, that Agnes was never, it's not, maybe she was spoiled and she had that attitude, but she wasn't like her sisters. In a way, she was not like her sisters, and they didn't like her for that. And it's just kind of like you're kind of wondering why, and I think that's part of the interpretation too, is
Yeah.
why do they ostracize her just because she doesn't act like them or buy the same things as them and all that.
Yeah.
Um,
Perhaps she had something that you can't really purchase. It's something you have to work at, and just being a good person, you know?
oh wait, you cut out. Sorry, I only heard you say being a good person.
So I said, like, it might be one of those things where, all the value in the world cannot buy what she had, and that was she was authentic. And she was just genuinely good.
Right, right, and then that's true, and I think it's like this contrasting of their hollowness, and you don't really see Agnes's character much, so Anna kind of represents that heart, you
Mhm.
know, that care, the essence of just care in general, whereas the other sisters are kind of blinded by, um, things that we would consider more trivial, maybe gossip, how they look, who they're dating, with the doctor and stuff. Uh, more superficial things. And then when you place all their little squirrels um, in a hospice situation, it just, to me, it amplifies even how much more they are like that,
Mhm.
because in a hospice situation like that, I've been in one myself personally, like people are pretty much only focused on the person passing away in general, and they're trying to give them their last days or hours of life, like they're trying to make them meaningful. Like I remember someone that played guitar came over and my personal life played some songs for him and stuff. Like you don't see like, or at least I didn't, but it's just weird to have this family drama going on in this situation. It should
Mhm.
be about Agnes, not about the sisters, and the sisters are making it about themselves. Uh,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Matthew, do you have any final thoughts on Cries and Whispers?
No, I don't. I think this is one of his solid movies. I don't know if this is the. I would say I wouldn't watch this one first.
Mhm.
I watched Wild Strawberries first, but this is definitely one of his solid entries. I like Autumn Sonata more,
Mhm.
which we're about to talk about, but I think this is a great Bergman film. I think this might have been the first I saw in color as well, and it's stunning what he can do. Uh,
Absolutely, yeah.
so yeah,
Um,
those are my final thoughts. Yeah,
as far as ratings go, I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars. What would you rate this one?
I also gave this one a 4 out of 5. Yeah,
Hell
yeah.
yeah.
So we're agreed on that. My ratings, I tend to rate higher because I just tend to like movies, and even in the even in like bad movies, I can find something I like. So I try and rate a little higher, but this is definitely deserving of an 8. Like I would not be like, oh, this is closer to a 7. This is a well deserved 8.
I agree. And also, I agree. I don't, as far as if you were to dip your toes in Bergman, this might be to, um, I don't know what the best word for it. It's not a soft landing spot. I mean, you're
Yeah,
diving into the deep end, you know?
yeah, you're really getting into hit. Like it might be you might feel like it's too abstract for you
Hmm.
if you just watch this one. You might want to watch like the Seventh Seal first, where I mean that one's abstract, because it's about like death and life, but at the same time, there's a little more of a plot to it. It's a little more easy to follow. Great movie. Persona, in my opinion, was even way harder to follow than Cries and Whispers. But I totally agree. I wouldn't start with this one, but you could make it like your second or third. Just once you kind of get Bergman's vibes and his general themes of family and religion and morality is kind of what he really likes to discuss.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Let's dip into Autumn Sonata. And Matt, would you like to give I guess, a little synopsis on what Autumn Sonata was kind of about?
Sure. So, man, the first time I saw this movie, I'll just start off with this. I remember thinking that was the best script I think I've ever seen in a film because the way it developed even more than the other one. I'll explain that later. But for the synopsis, essentially, it's just about um, a girl, Eva. Her husband's kind of in the movie, he's in the movie a decent amount. And she has this her mom come visit, uh, and she hasn't seen her in like 7 years. And then, without getting more into it, she basically comes and visits, and things don't really go right. And in my opinion, this movie, in comparison to Cries and Whispers, is like it, but you see more. He shows you more of the inner characters, if you know what I'm saying. Like
Mhm.
you see the explosion happen
Mhm.
eventually. So this, in my opinion, the movie is about a narcissistic mother, and it's about a child growing up with a narcissistic mother and how that has affected the way that child, Eva, who's now an adult, has kind of conducted her life. And it shows. And God, man, we were talking about last time about the actors' faces. That is just as good in this. Like, it tells you the story half the time. But in my opinion, synopsis would just be narcissistic child. You see how the relationship is when they're older, and how, the way you're treated when you're a child has so much of an effect on you, and how it can be cyclical, as well. Uh, So that would be my synopsis of the movie. Oh, and of course, there's the aspect of the piano playing. But in my opinion, that's just a tool of the narcissistic mother.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, this movie, first off, made me appreciate my mom. I
Me
do.
too.
I already
So
did,
much.
but I'm like, God, I could have had, like, if I had this mom, man, I don't think I would freaking be able to make it through life.
Yeah. I mean, and I know people like that mom. See, that's the thing. I know ladies like that mom. like not like friends, but I'm not gonna get more specific. But I know people like that, and it's so funny how similar they act as they do in the movie. But yeah, no, it made me appreciate my mom so much too because he was not like that in the slightest. Um,
Yeah, and like, just drawing from like my life experiences, like you hit the nail right on the head because it's like when you talk to your parents, there's kind of an expectation where it's like not even an expectation, it's just a reality that, with a normal nurturing relationship, they're very interested in you, your progressions, like how your life is going. And it was almost like the mom is trying to flip that. It's like, this is, yeah, I got good at doing this and I was in California. It didn't seem like a mother daughter relationship.
yeah, not yeah, not at all. So for me, what I loved just about at least the beginning of the film, and it would have been a while since I'd seen it, so I didn't remember everything, but it's how they always say show don't tell in movies. Don't just have a bunch of a big exposition dump like,
Hmm.
oh, my dad died in the fire 5 years ago, and you know what I'm saying. They say
Yeah.
don't do that because you're not going to remember that as an audience if they just say it. But in what Bergman does, I find so fascinating in this, and it's so well done, is that it is all dialogue,
Mm.
and it's not an expedition dump. It's like what they're talking about bring up more and more questions for me. Like for example, I wrote some stuff down. Like when they first see each other, the mom's like, "You haven't given me a big hug like that since when you were little." And I'm like, "That's okay. What?" And then all of a sudden she says, Helena's living with us. And you see the mom go freak out freak out. And you're like, who's Helena? Why is the mom freaking out? And then, they go meet Helena, and you could tell that she's like disgusted by and it's just like the dialogue opens up all these different and then you learn about what was the boy's name that drowned. You learn about it's the same thing with Eric later. Well, like he comes up through dialogue, but it's not like she doesn't just say, "Remember when Eric drowned 4 years ago?" It's like it comes up naturally
Yeah.
through the conversation, and it's just like this developing, unfolding, like scenario where you are kind of like, okay, Eva's acting a little odd because of all of these things that we're now seeing unfold. And I loved that. I thought it was brilliant.
You
Um,
you touched on some really these very subtle, nuanced plot points that were absolutely amazing. But when you said dialogue was great, I mean, probably one of the most compelling, emotional scenes, dialogue-driven scenes, was the mother-daughter confrontation, and that was like probably one of the best pieces of cinema I have seen
oh,
myself.
yeah, when she wakes up in the night, right, and she had a drink, and then
Mhm.
they start talking, and then that talk, because that's so many movies are like they're quippy, like in dialogue they'll be like it's not how people talk, so it's like the way an argument will happen, it will it'll just burst, like it'll go up and just.
Mhm.
But the way most arguments happen in real life is it's like a mountain, like it goes up and down a little and up and down, and eventually it bursts. You know what I mean? And you
Mhm.
see that here. Um, you see like them like before that scene you mentioned, they're playing the piano, or she's playing that song for her mom. Eva is, and you see the mom watch, and you can't, and it's almost just the mom's face, and you can't tell if she's disgusted or if she's proud.
Yeah.
To me, I couldn't tell, and then it switches, and you can't tell if the daughter admires her yet, or if, but she has this look of disgust too. So you're wondering in your head, you're like, man, something's wrong here, something's up. And in that scene you mentioned, that dialogue, that's the that's the explosion. That's the back and forth. They start out small, just but then it gets more and more, and then eventually she's just like, I hate you, she erupts, and it's, yeah, yeah. She's like, you're never there for me. Basically, you
Mhm.
neglected me as a child. Just all those horrible things.
And yeah, I thought it was really um, true to the way that a narcissist would likely um, kind of corner the relationship to where it's like, I want you to be like me, and I want your attention when I want it, and I want it to be on my terms when she describes her childhood.
Exactly. Yeah. You get that through that little flashback scene of her as a kid, her kind of sitting in the corner. Her mom's not there. She's only ever with dad. Mom only cares about herself. And that's shown through so many things. You got, I remember the one part where she's just getting there, juxtaposing. It's showing side by side Eva talking to her husband about how great she thinks her mom is doing. And this is way before, they really get into it. And then the mom, meanwhile, is like, basically, God, I hate this place. Why is Helena here? I can't believe Helena's here. And then she does other things like try and give Helena a watch, or she tries to give Eva something material. So you realize, and I've seen this too in real people, they think the way to show affection and love is by giving gifts.
Hmm.
And that's not how you really do it, but that's how they know it. And, so many narcissistic aspects like that, as well as the mom having just all these guys, like, you come up, Mark, Leonardo. I'm like, who are all these people? And, and then she's speaking on English on the phone to that man, and maybe not subtle, but something I notice is that that's when she truly seems happy. She has a grin on her face whenever she's talking to some other man. It's like it's just about her. It's her world, and her daughter um is like she loves her daughter like she would love a nice car.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and to kind of add on to the seeking of male affection, it seemed like she derived a lot of her pleasure from being valued by people. The
Uh-huh.
mother, that
Yeah.
is.
Yeah. Being valued, and being like mastering her piano, whatever thing, Beethoven or whatever she was doing, going around, touring around, and I'm guessing it's that applause she gets,
Yes.
and then there's one point where the reason I say it's cyclical, and you never really know if she's lying or not,
Mhm.
because that's how narcissistic characters are. But in my opinion, I don't think she is in this scene where she says essentially her mom did the same thing to her, and the only way she was able to express herself as a child was through music. I think that's probably true in the movie, and I think
Mm.
that's why that's the only she like pushed her daughter to do that, because maybe she really grew up, without those paternal feelings. And it's just like, hey, here's my mini me, my daughter Eva. Basically, I want her to be just like me and play the pieces as well as me. And since this was the only thing that brought me joy when I was little, it's also now going to be the only thing that brings Eva joy. You know,
Yes.
narcissists are like that.
Yeah, exactly. And when so she she wasn't able to get gratification any other way, or attention, or people kind of vying for her, until she had something that brought joy to other people. And it's like, going to the Greek myth of Narcissus, it's like the most beautiful image in the world is your reflection. So you want
Oh, yeah.
your child to be a reflection of you.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, there was something I was gonna say. Oh, uh, so there's another interesting thing about her narcissism, and so I've like like personally. I wasn't a psychology major or anything. I just done a lot of research on psychopaths and sociopaths, and they're different than narcissists, but I always thought they're interesting, just because like I was always like, these a lot of these people literally can't fear and things like that. Like, how is this even possible? So I've done a lot of research on that, and one thing, and this is not like an expert opinion, obviously, but one thing is that so most of the people they study with this are obviously in prison. And one thing they find is that at least the killers, when they're describing like when they killed someone, the day when the officer would be like, describe the day, and they'll be like, well, it was sunny outside. I ate this for breakfast, this for lunch. Got in my blah blah car. And the thing is, they talk about the actual killing in the same way as they would talk about getting a burger.
Very
And
blasé about it.
then there's a scene where the mom says, "When I had y'all as a baby, all I can remember is the pain." Not, I don't know if you remember that scene. She's like, "All I remember
Yes,
is the pain of having the child. I don't even remember the joy, the happiness, and all that stuff." And to me, that was a huge red flag because at least my mother and most mothers I know, like, when that baby comes out, like, I mean, I'm not a woman, but
life
it just
changing.
seems like there's life changing, like their eyes, light up to and to her, this maybe was just more like, oh, I got a kid now,
Hmm.
got something else to take care of. It didn't really affect her emotionally. Her emotions are kind of gone in terms of empathy.
Yeah, and to expand upon that, you really see that after she leaves the house. When she's
Yep,
on the train, is like that kind of huge monumental interaction has such a effect on the daughter, but it doesn't even, it's almost as though it never happened for the mother.
exactly. She just moves on to that next man.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, it's so, and I think the husband aspect is a little interesting because he knows what's going on. He knows what's about to happen. He even introduces the movie.
Yeah.
Um, but he just kind of stands by and watch because I don't think he can do anything. Like, if I was married to someone and their mother was like that, like what am I supposed to do? I think the husband aspect's a little interesting because I think he represents a lot of people that see this happening, but there's not really much they can do about it, you know?
Mhm. Yeah, and I'm glad you touched on the husband because I want to make dual points. It's about the husband, and Helena is the sister. Yes.
Yeah, the mentally disabled or mentally challenged sister. Yeah, special needs sister.
So it kind of felt like they were personifications of two very important points as far as the daughter goes. The husband was almost a way to represent the closed off nature and kind of inability to form the truest of connections with people, where it's almost like a partnership as opposed to like a husband and a wife. And Helena, to me, almost kind of represents like the the crippled nature of the emotional development of the daughter. And they really, to me at least, and it's very interpretive obviously, but they
Yeah.
they do a really good job of kind of illustrating both of those things for the daughter.
Yeah, that's actually, I didn't think of that at all. That's an interesting point. Um, but yeah, I think you're right. I, for me, like it's kind of like the sick thing from Cries and Whispers. For Helena, at least, it's this weird aspect where the mom is afraid of the sickness, but she feels, and in that big argument, Eva's basically like, "You caused this. You
Mhm.
caused her to be sick." And the mom can't handle that. She can't handle that at all. But I think, but the movie at one point you're like, does she feel bad for her daughter? And then I realized, after she went in there, the way she acted, offered her wristband, tried to talk to her, but seemed like she really just wanted to get the hell out. Honestly. And then you realize when she's in a room talking to herself or having her little monologue, she really hates Helena, her own daughter, just
Mhm.
because she got sick. And I mean, to me, that I guess like you kind of like you said, it represents her caring about herself because she thinks that's a reflection of her. A
Mm.
sick daughter, she's like, I've got this disabled child. Um, you know, uh, like the fact that she was even there and had to see her upset her so much. And I think it's because she feels like having a disabled daughter is some kind of failure on her part when it was probably just she just contracted disease or something.
Mhm.
Um, and to me, that's horrible, and it's very telling of the mother's character. I think Helena is is I don't want to say the most important character, but the character that shows the most how truly selfish and maybe I don't want to say uncaring, but I guess you know just how truly selfish the mom is. I guess
Yeah, I agree.
because the final scene before she leaves for the train is Helena on the ground yelling for her mom to just come comfort her. That's it, and she doesn't. Cuts cuts to her on the train, and that scene was horrific for me
Yeah,
because she's out of her bed on the ground, like literally crawling to her mom. Like she loves her, like she wants to love her mom just like Eva, but like the mom just like, and she even says it a couple times. She like can't seem to love them back.
yeah.
Like she's like, why did I come here? Why did I even come to this house? And she says all that stuff. Um, but yeah, man, this movie is just full of tension in every scene.
Absolutely. Yeah, a thing that you made me thought of while talking about the the mother and Helena, and I think it ties pretty deeply into, the narcissistic nature of the mother. But I think she was one of her major concerns too was how this would reflect on her the way that she makes a point to say like, oh, when you were in the hospital you were so far away, and it's like she doesn't want her to look bad to other people because of her not being as much a help. She doesn't want people to think that she's a bad person. She's more
Right.
wrapped up in how she will be portrayed by other people as opposed to just doing the right thing because it is the right thing to do.
Yeah, exactly. She's more all focused on others' perceptions of her.
Yes.
Um, and what is common trait of a narcissist is to basically treat Eva the exact way she did in the movie. Um, like someone I know, I'll just say that their mom, like she would just go out and party all the time and just kind of leave them to themselves when they were younger. And I mean, that's a similar thing that probably happened obviously when Eva was younger. But a lot of times parents just, I guess, don't realize that's neglect because they're so caught up in their own world. Like she's so caught up with all those men that it's like she never should have been a parent, essentially.
Mhm.
um, because she seems like someone who's always going to be living in that world of me, 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 me. Um, and I noticed it from the very start. All she would talk about was herself. And then she's like, "Oh, I've been talking about me for a while, Eva. What's been on your mind?" And then when Eva starts talking, she just brings the conversation back to herself again. And I've had jobs with people like that, and that's very real the way she acts. Just say that. Um,
I love how the subject materials is covered in this because man, if a director could really butcher this badly.
oh yeah, oh yeah. Like just if the dialogue was like a notch worse, it would be nearly as good.
No.
Um,
Yeah,
because
exactly.
it's crazy you think that this movie is pretty much all taking place inside, except for those beautiful shots of the lake and her walking through the graveyard towards the end. Like, odd, and it's like they're just inside basically talking the whole movie, but it's so interesting.
Mhm.
Which is so, in my opinion, that's the hardest thing to do is to make like a talkie, not a talkie, I think that's a genre, but a movie where they're basically just talking most of the time and
Mhm.
it's still like really, really capture my attention and just suck me in. Because usually I prefer visual stimulation, but this, I didn't even need that. I was just like, it was like I was there with them. I felt the tension. Um, I think another thing I just wanted to talk about that I thought was important was the death of their son Eric. First of
Yes.
all, it seemed like the mom didn't even know much about it because she's like, "Oh, remember Eric drowned 4 years ago?" She's like, "Oh yeah," and "Oh yeah, my son drowned 4 goes. You remember your grandson died 4 years ago? Oh yeah, but like the way the husband talked about it seemed like Eva had gone from like having a kid, she had finally found something that was hers. Because
Mm.
they had this other brief she has another brief discussion with her mom that maybe lasts 2 seconds, and she mentioned some guy she was gonna marry when he's 18. I forgot his name. I wrote it down, but I forgot it. Oh, Stefan. And it was her first boyfriend. They had this very brief convo, and her mom clearly didn't allow them to have a child together. She made them get an abortion because she just didn't like him.
Mm.
And then she has the other baby, with her current husband, Eric, and then he dies, and she keeps the room the same way. It seems like she's still trying to hold on to that notion that Eric is alive because I feel like that's being raised how she was. I feel like that was all she had. Like when she figured out she wanted to be a mom, she didn't want to be a piano player. That was what her mom wanted for her.
Mhm.
Because I remember the husband saying when she got pregnant, she gave up piano and all these things. And it was like, I think he said it was like a gray film, but I thought he was saying it was a very happy time in their life before he died.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah. What are your thoughts on that?
I think the son was the chance at an escape from being defined by the lack of relationship with the mother and to
Mhm.
find finally there not in this case but generally the relationship between a son and daughter and a mother like that is kind of the truest form of love that you can ever have. And I
Yeah.
I think that character she even wrote, and it was like in the kind of fourth wall breaking exposition by the husband
Husband?
at the beginning, where he said she felt like she could never truly be loved for who she was,
Yeah.
and a son
Yeah.
would be the chance to have like pure, undisputable love.
I actually didn't catch that, but I actually completely agree with you. I think you're exactly right on that point. Because she never had gotten that unconditional love. And I mean, it seems like she loves her husband, but we don't really get much of that. It seems to me more like her husband feels bad for her and wants
Mm.
to care for her. But yeah, yeah, because they kind of open and wrap the movie with him kind of saying those things about her. Um, but let's see. I want to talk about another thing.
Hey, I'm gonna
Oh,
pause it real quick, Matt. I
okay.
just gotta knock at the door, okay?
Okay, go for it.
All right. We're back, everyone. Matt, I'm sorry about that. Do you happen to remember the point that you were beginning to make?
Um, yeah, so I was gonna talk. Okay, so I kind of want to talk more about that scene you mentioned earlier where everything blows up. Um, so Eva talks about when she was 14, her mom cut her hair short the way she wanted it, made her read books she couldn't understand, made her, play the piano intensely. She was literally trying to create like a perfect child in her eyes. And all that did was lead to Eva hating herself because you didn't know who she was. And I think that's kind of the core problem. And what you were saying about, you know, their child could give her the unconditional love she's seeking. I think Eva is confused about who she is because she's never gotten that love. She's never gotten that affirmation. Like when I grew up, my parents always supported me in whatever sports I wanted to play and things like that. And in this case, it's like the mom's kind of like, you're going to play piano because I'm good at piano and I love piano, or I'm going to basically neglect you. And I'm going to neglect you and make you play piano, basically. So, and then, God, the shots, I was just going to also mention the shots where she's younger with the dad and the mom's just not there is just sad, you know? Um, that part just made me sad.
Yeah,
Because I
all
just
the
truly
memories
see
are
this.
pretty sad. Like,
Yeah. Like, I just truly see this as if Eva didn't seem like such a caring person in the film, even though she's devastated and has lost everything, I think she would break this cycle. She does not seem narcissistic. But
mm,
her mom, you know, is pretty much one of the worst
yeah.
moms I've seen in a movie.
I'd have
And
to
it's
agree with you because
flawed.
the way that Eva, cares for Helena, you can see that
Yeah.
she's not nearly
And
as bad as her mother is.
And then this just the really stark contrast of her mom hating her own daughter because she's disgusted by her sickness. I mean, with your own daughter, I mean, I can understand not wanting to, because she sent her to that home, she said. I can understand if that's overwhelming for her as just a normal human being. But it seems like the mom was just like, "Oh, had another daughter, always on piano tour. Oh, she got ill. Send her away. Send her away." And
Mhm.
that's actually a thing a lot of rich parents do. I don't know if you've heard about those camps that were more popular in the 80s and 90s. And it was actually some of the most wealthy people would send their children to these camps, and they ended up mostly getting abused by staff, other children, in god awful ways. I've read about it. There's a documentary about it. Um, and
That's funny you
this little
mentioned that. I
yeah.
think there's like three scenarios. One, I think, is a Kennedy where she got lobotomized and then they just acted like she died, but she ended up living a long time
Mhm.
afterwards, just uh, basically in a comatose state. And then I think there's two members of the royal family where they just sent them away and never visit them, said that they died, but I think one ended up living into the 2000s and one, died at the age of like 60 or something, but never mentioned, just completely stowed away. and forgotten.
Yeah, it's sad, and I think it's a common trait with, you know, you could say she's a workaholic too,
Mhm.
but even if you're a work like I worked at a law firm. I'm in law school. I've seen plenty of workaholics, and there are still a lot that love their kids and would never send them away like that. But I think, like I was saying before, I think she just sees her kind of like a possession, and she's
Mm.
like, "Oh, this possession broke. I'm gonna send it to the shop to get fixed." You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
she's like, "They'll fix her over there, and she'll come back and be who I want her to be again." And life just doesn't work like that. Like you can't just send you can't just send her to like a Pokemon healing station. It's like fuck. Like you can't just send people away and expect them to come back how you want. They're probably gonna come back more
Worse.
messed up. Yeah. Um, yeah. Oh, and another thing when I was saying before about picturing her children's faces sorry, only remembering that thing. She said she couldn't remember her own mother's face, her children's faces when she was away. Also, another sign of a psychopath. They don't remember faces because it just doesn't register with them because I think it's because they're so concerned with other things. It's like they don't even have the capacity to care. So they oftentimes forget people that they've met,
Mhm.
and they oftentimes are terrible with faces. And I mean, this is just me reading into it, but I mean, she displays all the traits of just a narcissistic mother, where the father just kind of went back and took it. He just like let it happen. He's not like he's a bad guy, but I felt like he didn't show much of him because it was just through the flashbacks. But I felt like he was probably controlled by her too, and she was cheating on him with a bunch of dudes.
Yeah.
You Um,
Got a
but
real like Will Smith, Jada Smith situation when she's like, "Your father was okay with me being with other men."
yeah, that was weird because I was like so confused on who the dad. I thought the dad was Leonardo at the beginning because she's like, he was a great friend. I lived with him for like 23 years, and I was like, okay, so wait, was that her dad? Because I had seen it before, and it turns out there's like three other guys and her dad. And I'm like, okay, yeah, it was. She just has a lot of men in her life. And it's all about her self validation.
Mhm.
Her doing well at her tours on piano. If her daughter doesn't do well, it's a representation in her mind of herself not doing well. So she's pissed. Um, and then, yeah, like I know I'm kind of repeating myself from earlier, but the faces, I know I already talked about them at the piano thing, or at the piano when they were playing piano. But this is something this director I love, John Cassavetes. I don't know if you've heard of him. He's an American, like '70s director.
I've
He has
heard
this
of him.
thing.
Yeah, he's great. Yeah.
Yeah, I love. He's one of my favorites. He does this thing a lot where he always zooms in very close on the actors' faces, just like how they do in this movie. He even goes a little closer, but the when he does it, if the actors or actresses are and in Cassavetes movies they're great, just like in this film. Like somehow, and I don't know how they do it because I'm not an actor. But even if I were, like I don't like it's like like I was saying way earlier, they say more than even the dialogue sometimes.
Mm.
Like the close up just of Eva looking at her mom, saying how much she used to admire her. She's so confused about her mother. She admired her when she was a kid because of how, luxurious she seemed and how great she was at the piano. She envied her, but then she also was confused and hated her because she was never there. And it's like when they zoom in on Eva's face when she's looking at her mom and she's not trying to bubble everything inside like at the beginning, you can kind of, to me, you see all of it in her face, even though she's just acting. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And man, I mean, he Bergman from, I guess, the little amount of exposure I have. He certainly has actresses, especially that he really likes to run with, and
Oh yeah.
because they're freaking amazing in being able
I,
to tell the story body language wise and facially.
I think Eva might be his wife. Might have been his wife. I think that was Ingrid Bergman. I'm not 100% sure. I might be completely wrong. But that actress is in a lot of his films. The one that plays Eva. Um, Same with the one that plays Anna in Cries and Whispers. Um, yeah, it's great when they call them muses a lot. And a lot of the times the directors are creepy with them. But I don't think that was the case with Bergman. Like Woody Allen and
Yeah.
the
So I
director.
think
They've
I
had
talked to someone. I don't think Ingrid. I think they just happen to have the same last name. I don't think they're
Oh, really?
related at all.
Oh, okay. I kind of thought that because I didn't know at the beginning, but then it said Ingrid Bergman. I was like, must be his wife because they have used their directors do use their wives.
Mhm.
It happens because a lot of them end up
Meeting
getting.
meeting through, their work, right?
Yeah, yeah, and I think a lot of the times what I've heard about directing is that the most important thing is being able to work with an actor. So if you have an actor you can work with, you're going to use them probably. The
Yeah.
only the only like really amazing director I can think of right now that hasn't used actors a ton is probably Kubrick. He switches his cast up all the time.
Yeah. That's a
You know what
really
I
good
mean?
point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think of that, and then you think of most like Tarantino's kind of got his people,
Mhm.
like all the mainstream people kind of have their people, and then in the more art type movies, they usually have them too, especially back in this era, they would use their same acting troops because the actors and actresses know kind of how to work with or what they know what Ingrid Bergman wants,
Yeah.
you know. But
I get
yeah.
just one final scene that I kind of wanted to touch on just cuz I don't know necessarily what was to be made, and maybe I can make heads or tails of it while I talk it through, but the mother talked about a interaction she had. I think it was from the composer, and
Uh-huh.
the I guess the composer said that he was sad, and the mother didn't really understand why because it seemed like a successful performance. He's like, I wrote down this date, that was the last time you were truly great. Like, you completely owned the audience, the stage, everything. And he was like, that was the last time I was truly happy. And I wonder, like, what was trying to be said there, because it felt like that was a very big, monumental moment where the mother was being completely genuine, and like
Uh, oh yeah,
maybe
finish your
might
yeah.
have signified maybe why the mother is continuing to look for gratification, or like as she began to saw her self-image in a negative light.
Yeah, to me, I don't know if that was the same thing where she kind of admits her mom never touched her and neglected her. I can't remember.
Hmm.
But to me, in that scene, she is being genuine. I agree with you. Um, but in the end, it all comes back to her being upset because she wasn't praised, you know?
Hmm.
Um, but but yeah, that's such an interesting scene because you finally feel like the mom's like being real with us. Um, and it seems as if she almost feels bad, you know? Like that's the first time you see her feel bad. She's like, well, he told me that was my last good performance. And then I realized that I hadn't been there and I called your dad and I told him, you know, I was going to come back and I was done touring. And then clearly that didn't happen because then I believe Eva talks about how she wasn't even there when he was dying. And she's like, oh, I was busy doing Mozart's whatever, you know? and then just goes back into that, into her world again of, of herself. But no, I that's a very important moment in the movie to me. I think I agree, because I think she's really being genuine, and I think she's contemplating that that probably was her peak, and now she's just kind of lost.
Mm.
But she also has these kids that she never cared for and still doesn't seem to care much for. So in this empty void she has, she now thinks she's no longer a great piano player. She doesn't really have a family. Well, she does, but I mean, they don't seem to care for her because of how she acts. So what does she do? She seems to get with different men, and
Yeah,
that's her new validation. She's always got to have someone validating her. And that was a point where someone was truthful with her about her, her being, invalidating her performance, basically. Even though it was still good, he was saying, "You're at your greatest here. How about you go spend some time with your family?" And in her mind, I don't even know if, I think it kind of registered, but I don't think it fully registered. I think she's still, I think it was like it kind of goes through them. Like they think about it for a little, and then they just kind of, like narcissistic people in general, and then she just kind of falls back into her, uh, you know, original, or her normal way of being, if you know what I'm saying.
absolutely. Matt, do you have any final thoughts on this one before we rate them?
I would say that besides, I would say this is my favorite Bergman besides Wild Strawberries and probably Winter Light. I would highly recommend watching this movie. This could even be your first Bergman movie, I think, over Cries and Whispers. And like I've said, I think multiple, I said multiple times, the script is one of the best scripts ever, in my opinion, just because of how much gets conveyed and how much you like see, and it feels real. This apparent, narcissistic abuse kind of shown on camera uh, through someone getting older and different events that affect them throughout life, and how that narcissistic parent affected that person's personality, their actions, etc. So I just think this is a great movie for everyone, but especially if you have a parent, or someone who has a parent who's kind of like this. I think if you watch this movie, it will really mean a lot to you, and I think you'll really get a lot out of it. So yeah.
Completely agree. I gave this one 5 out of 5 stars. I mean, this is in the top 20 movies I've seen, and I think even the more greats that I watch, it'll definitely still stay within a very high, ranking for me. I'm assuming you gave this a pretty high rating as well.
I did. I initially gave it a 9 on the rewatch. I was thinking about 10, but I don't know. I just couldn't. I really, the difference isn't like, it's in my like, I have a list of 175 my favorite films. It's in that list. That
Mhm.
basically means a lot to me. If as long as it's in the list, it's one of my favorites. So I absolutely love this movie. It could be a 9 or a 10 for me, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
my rating is it's kind of similar to you. It's like 4.5 to 5. Like those are movies that I really like. I can't really define the thing that pushes it over the edge to a 5 for me. It's just, it's like it's almost like trying to describe love, you know? It's like
Yeah. Yeah, I know. Yeah.
you get it, you feel it or you don't.
Yeah, yeah. The only thing for me that can absolutely push something into a 5 is if there's comedy in it that I did not expect that I love. An example would be like, Boogie Nights, if you've
Mm,
seen that film.
not yet.
Um,
I really
Pulp
want to though.
Yeah, like, I did not expect that movie to have so many funny lines. Or, like, A Clockwork Orange is, I mean, a dark ass movie, but it's, in my opinion, there's so many funny parts. And when I laugh, I just tend to enjoy movies more. So that like and Wild at Heart, David Lynch movie too. Just usually that pushes it to 5 out of 5 for me. But I mean, I have so many 9 out of 10s in my favorite list. It, like you said, it's hard to really. To me, the only big separation is when I start going from a 7 or a 3.5 to like a 3 or a 2.5. You know?
Yeah, that's a
Uh,
way bigger distinction for me. Yeah, like
yeah,
if it's a
yeah,
5, I'm like, 5 out of 10. I'm like,
yeah.
yeah. I try to give benefit of the doubt. If there's anything that I think they're like, something that really resonates, I'm like, yo, I can't give it a 5 anymore. But if it's just completely flat and bland, I that's when it really gets to a 5 for me.
Yeah. 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 Same here. So,
So we discussed what we wanted our next theme to be, and uh, Matthew, would you like to let the audience know what we're going to be doing next?
well, do we decide on Dogma or Malik? I'll do.
Oh
I'm.
crap! Shit,
I
my
was.
bad.
I remember we decided. I'd love either. I'd do either
You know
wholeheartedly.
what? I will. I'm gonna flip something, and that's gonna decide it for us. Yeah,
Okay.
make it as dramatic as possible. So I'm gonna do basically heads is gonna be Dogma, tails is gonna be Malik.
Okay.
So heads. So
Okay.
we're
So dog. Okay.
Dogma. It
Yeah. Yeah.
is Dogma 95.
I
Um,
think for me, I only know three. I've only seen three. I don't even know of any other Dogma films. My choice would be Julian Donkey Boy, but it might be a little too weird. It's a
I
very good movie, but if you've never seen a Harmony Korine film, you're gonna be pretty taken aback. You're either gonna love it or hate it. I'm just gonna say that. You'll love it or
um
hate it.
yeah, he's one of those directors. First and foremost, his shit is um hard to find. Um
Yeah, no, I can get it for you. I can get it for you.
Yeah. So just like a
Please.
historical perspective, I first heard about him. I think it was a review on the movie Kids. Have you seen
Yeah.
that?
Oh yeah, that's one of my favorite films. That's how he got big. He wrote that film when he was 18, 19,
That's
17. Yeah, he
insane.
was young. And Larry Clark directed it. And all those guys in that film, I would watch that film, but it's not Dogma 95. But that film was like the actors were basically Harmony's friends, and they were all like big skateboarders in New York City, and that this is a time when like skateboarding was like blowing up more. Like he was in with if you know that brand Supreme, I'm sure you know. If
Oh, wow. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
he knows all those guys, he's like best friends with Mark Gonzalez, the creator of Supreme. Like he, uh, yeah. So he was friends with like all the actors in the movies, and they're all like real like New York '90s kids, and like a few of them have sadly passed away after the film, like because they lived hard, man. Like in terms of like drugs and partying, and
Mhm.
you really see that in the film. And it's a very like I love raw and real films, and films where I'm like, is this a movie or a documentary? And Kids is definitely one of those films for me.
Yeah,
Um,
so I heard about him through that, and I wanted to watch that film so bad. And I saw Julian Donkey Boy just recently on Letterbox, and the title, I was like, I don't know, I don't know what that is. So it's something I was, probably just gonna just dive into blindly. But yeah, I had no idea it was Dogma either.
Yeah, it's Dogma. He joined their little group and made a Dogma film. But it's very interesting. Like I said, Werner Herzog's in it. His character is mean, but also fucking hilarious. Just because the way Werner talks.
Yeah.
And
No, a
how he's
scene you
playing.
sent me was absolutely
Yeah,
hysterical.
he's playing a Southern American dad, basically, that only like one of those dads where it's like he's like my kid's gonna be the best football player, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
And he's like this just does not fit at all, but it's so funny. And then but the film
Stop
is
shivering. Stop shivering.
yeah, it's like, "Stop." What's yeah, he's like, "What are you doing?" Yeah, um, but the film really is like, I don't have schizophrenia, so I can't attest to this, but in my opinion, it is the best film that portrays schizophrenia and what it's like for a person, um, yeah, because they actually Harmony's uncle's schizophrenic, and he made the movie because of his uncle. So it's a and the way it's filmed, you'll never see something filmed like it. I'm pretty sure he filmed it on mini DVD, like those things you can get for like 20 bucks,
Mm.
and he edited it and blew it up to like oh, maybe this was Trash Humpers. He did this with one of his movies. Filmed it, converted it to like 8 millimeter, and then blew it up to 32 millimeter. So it looks like he's filming like out of a fucking toaster or a piece of butter. Dude, it's nuts. But like it's just the whole aesthetic is if you watch the trailer, you know what I mean. It's very there's a lot of hidden cameras. It's very interesting. And then the other one I'd want to choose, which is a I guess more accessible dogma film would be The Celebration. And I don't want
Cool.
to give too much away. That film is great. And I don't want to spoil any of it for you.
Alright,
Yeah.
awesome. I'm looking
Yeah.
forward to it, man. I think that's gonna be really interesting, and it's a really interesting, I guess, subset of cinema.
Yeah, it's so cool seeing them restrict themselves and only use like they're literally walking around with like cameras you get for 20 bucks nowadays, like DVD, like those little mini DVD cams.
Mhm.
And so everything, looks not like a film. And to me, like I said, I love rawness. It just feels so raw. So
Yeah.
it's really cool. Yeah.
Alright, everyone. If you made it this far, thank you so much. Be sure to give this video a like if you did like it, and subscribe to the channel for definitely this dogma video because I think it's going to be a very, very interesting conversation. Also, check out Matthew's letterbox profile. He goes by War Dog, but
No,
War
War
Champ.
Chant,
My
War
sorry,
Chant. No, it's
sorry,
all good.
War
I actually
Champ.
stole that from Team AVO, if you ever used to watch them. I don't know if you know what that is, but
What was that? What's it from again?
sorry for ruining your outro.
No, no, no. You're good. What TV show was it from
Oh,
again?
no, I stole it from, back when I was a kid, I used to play a lot of Minecraft, and I watched Team Abolition, and there were these groups,
Oh,
and
okay.
one of them was named War Champ, and so I just kinda thought that was a dope name, and I just took it.
I like it.
Like, yeah, yeah, so
So you can
yeah, you can just follow me on there if you want, people listening. You don't have to, you can just check my profile out.
I definitely would
Uh,
recommend it because I think you first of all, you watch a lot of stuff, so they
yeah,
can look
and
at
I
your
follow everybody
reviews
back.
for stuff to watch, and I think you have some pretty dope lists too, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah, I have a couple lists. I'm trying to make some more. I follow if you follow me, I'm gonna follow you back. I follow everybody back. What I like more is having, like, a good community of people commenting on my reviews, I comment on their reviews, we discuss the film. That's what I really love about Letterboxd. So, yeah.
Absolutely. So, hey, thank you all for joining us, and we will catch you on the flippity flute.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, man.
Yeah, thank you too. I appreciate it.
Alright, see ya.